Get off my land now. We need to talk. Mr. Langston, HOA legal counsel. What a coincidence. I was just about to call a lawyer, the county assessor's office, and maybe even the local news station. Can we take this inside? No, right here's fine. Let the neighbors see it all. I'm sick to death of secret meetings and backroom deals. We've reviewed your documents. The board's prepared to make a reasonable offer. What kind of offer? Those are the dumbest things the HOA ever said to me after they backed me into a corner. Have you ever been squeezed by an HOA? Let me tell you about the ridiculous mess they've put me through. Drop a comment with the number 9 so I know you're ready for the story. Oh, and don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of the tense drama coming your way. I'm Ryland Ashwood, 37 years old, a landscape designer born in the tiny town of Emberlyn, now settled in the quiet suburbs of Thornridge. My family's land is all my grandfather left behind, a legacy stretching across 6 generations, soaked in memories and sweat. My job's about crafting beauty from the earth, but nothing could have prepared me for the dirty scheme the Homeowners Association was about to pull on the very place I call home. When the HOA plotted to bulldoze my family's land for some flashy resort, they had no idea I'd been quietly weaving a watertight plan for weeks. They walked right into my trap, swallowing every bait I dangled without a second thought. One day, a sharp-edged letter from the HOA stung my hand as I stood by the mailbox. But the real pain? It was in the shameless words inside. After a review of community boundaries, the 4 acres behind your house have been reclassified as common property. I read it 6 times, my grip tightening until the paper crumpled. That land's been the heart of my family for 6 generations. I stormed straight to Isolde Tremaine's house. She's the HOA's new president. Her perfectly trimmed garden and forced smile greeted me as she opened the door, decked out in running gear, not even bothering to hide her annoyance. "What brings you all the way here, Ryland?" she asked, her tone dripping with the vibe that I was interrupting her downtime. "That letter says you're taking my land. This has to be some blatant scam," I shot back, trying to stay calm while 1,000 needles pricked inside me. Isolde's smile was hollow. "No scam here. Our professional survey proves your grandfather's hand-drawn map is outdated. The board voted unanimously last night. Not a single heads up. I've paid taxes on that land for 25 years. She leaned down to inspect her glossy manicure. "HOA rules don't require advance notice for property adjustments. We're planning a luxurious pool area there. Everyone benefits, even you." I opened my mouth to argue, but then blaring music erupted from the house next door, the Flint's yard. Isolde's smile eased up. "I've got to run. Kate and Marlo are throwing a neighborhood welcome party. You should stop by. Might make this feel less heavy." On my walk back, the music grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. Through the fence, I spotted Kate and Marlo, my neighbors, laughing with a crowd by their shiny new pool, built suspiciously close to my property line. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bass pounded in my ears until 5 in the morning. I called Cade 7 times, no answer. At 5:25, I banged on their door. Cade opened it, face flushed, wine glass in hand. "Hey, party's over, what's up?" "It's almost 5:30. I've got work tomorrow," I said, my voice low from exhaustion and rage. Marlo peeked out from behind him. We cut the music at 5 sharp, checked the rules. But the noise kept going. Cade cut me off. "Isolde said we're good until 5. If you heard us chatting, deal with it." I took a deep breath to keep from snapping. "By the way, about Isolde, what do you 2 know about the HOA's plans for my land?" Their eyes darted away. That said it all. "You knew? You knew they're trying to steal my land?" "Not stealing," Marlo corrected, "just reallocating. The resort's getting a pro-length pool, a spa, a high-end bar. On my land." Cade shrugged. "It's not personal. Isolde showed us the real boundaries. Your grandfather's map just doesn't hold up anymore." Back home, I couldn't shut my eyes. I dragged my grandfather's old wooden chest down from the attic, the dust choking me until I coughed hard. Inside were the original ownership papers, yellowed with age. I spread them out on the kitchen table under a dim light, comparing every detail to the survey Isolde Tremaine had tucked into her letter. Something was off, way off. My grandfather's boundaries followed natural markers: the creek, the old oak, the rocky ridge. The HOA's map ignored all of that, drawing nonsense straight lines that sliced off 3 of my most precious acres. Then I spotted tiny handwriting in the corner of my grandfather's papers, something I'd never noticed before. It read, County Survey Marker, 1948. If those markers were still out there, an idea flared up in my mind, so intense my heart started pounding. But I couldn't do it alone. I scrolled through my phone contacts to Jericho Slade, a surveyor who'd worked with my dad years ago. I texted him, even though it was already 4 in the morning. The next morning, I called in sick and sped to the county records office. My cousin, Soren Ashwood, works there, and I needed the original surveys. These HOA folks, Soren muttered as we sifted through dusty files, they're getting way too bold. Here it is. The 1948 survey proved my land was bigger than I'd ever realized. The creek had shifted after a flood in 1965, but the legal boundaries never moved with it. My phone buzzed with a text from Isolde. Community notice. Groundbreaking for the Silver Pine Resort starts Thursday. Please clear personal items from the designated area. Thursday. I had just 4 days. On my drive back, I passed the Flint's house. Workers were setting up a massive speaker system next to their pool. Cade waved cheerfully as I rolled by, making my skin crawl even more. That afternoon, Jericho showed up with his gear. Let's find those old markers, he said. If they're still there, the HOA's in deep trouble. We worked until the sun dipped low, keeping clear of prying eyes behind the shed. Under years of overgrown grass, Jericho's metal detector pinged on the first marker. He looked up, stunned. Based on this, your land stretches 60 feet that way, including a chunk of the Flint's new pool. Before dark, we found 4 more markers, each one backing up my grandfather's map. My land was bigger than I'd ever tended. There's more, Jericho whispered. Check out this ridge. A 1949 geological report flagged it as a potential archaeological site. Native artifacts were found here back in the 1930s. I remembered my grandfather's stories, arrowheads, pottery shards. I'd always thought they were just tales to pass the time. What about legally? If it's verified, it triggers historical preservation rules. No one can build. That night, another party erupted next door. This time, I smirked as the music echoed. Let them enjoy it, their clocks ticking down. The doorbell rang at 7 in the evening. Hazel Briarwood, my 82-year-old neighbor from across the street, stood there with a casserole dish. Figured you could use some food with all that racket over there, she said. I invited her in and couldn't help spilling everything. Hazel listened closely, then said, Isolde's been pulling stunts like this for a while. Last winter, she forced the Baxters out with fake violations. Now her cousin owns their house. Why doesn't anyone stop her? Fear, mostly. She's tight with the mayor's wife. But Hazel grinned slyly. I taught high school history for 45 years and volunteered at the county museum. I know a thing or two about archaeological preservation. As Hazel left, she paused at the door. This land matters to you, doesn't it? More than just money? I thought of my grandfather teaching me to cast a net in the creek. My dad building a treehouse in the oak. It's my roots. Then fight for it, she said simply. At midnight, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Meeting tomorrow, 6 in the morning at Isolde's, bringing the crew to stake out the pool site on your land. Don't tell Ryland. They'd texted the wrong person. My heart raced. They weren't waiting for Thursday. I set my alarm for 4 in the morning. I had to be ready before they showed up. I woke up while it was still pitch dark, gulping down a bitter cup of coffee to shake off the fog. Jericho rolled up in an unmarked truck, his equipment stashed under a tarp. If we're right about these markers, he whispered in the faint light, the HOA's survey missed nearly 5 acres of your land. The morning dew soaked my pants as we drove stakes into the ground, following my grandfather's papers to the letter. Each stake felt like a spark of hope growing brighter. The last one landed smack in the middle of Cade and Marlowe's brand new wooden deck. They built that deck last month, I said to Jericho. The timing's too perfect. Not just perfect, he replied, checking his GPS gear. According to county permits, they put it up right after the HOA's new survey, almost like they knew the new boundaries ahead of time. He handed me his tablet with the report. The HOA's survey completely skips the creek's original path before the 1965 flood. No expert messes that up by accident. As the sun climbed higher, we heard engines rumbling in the distance. Hide the gear, I murmured. Let's see what they do. From behind the shed, we watched Isolde pull up with 4 board members and a landscaping crew. They unloaded spray paint and measuring tools, laughing as they marked out spots for the resort, a bar, and a massive pool, all on my land. This spa area is going to be amazing right here, Isolde said, blasting a big X across my grandmother's flower bed, the one I'd tended for 18 years. I wanted to charge out and confront her, but Jericho held me back. Not yet. We need more proof. That morning, I headed to the local history society where my mom used to volunteer. The director, Paloma Ortiz, greeted me warmly. "You've got uncanny timing," she said, pulling out a file. "Someone from the county just requested all the records on your land, Isolde Tremaine. She's real curious if any historical claims were ever filed." I laid out my whole situation. Paloma's frown deepened, her face darkening. This happened in Sagebrush Vale once. That HOA chair worked for the same development company as Isolde. She slid an old newspaper across the table. They turned nearly a third of the neighborhood into rental condos after pushing out the original residents. It hit me then. This wasn't just about a community pool. It was a scheme to jack up property values and cut shady deals. "I need proof of the archaeological value my grandfather always talked about," I said, my voice firm with resolve. Paloma gave a small smile. "Your grandfather donated a few things he found on your land years ago." She brought out a little box holding arrowheads and broken pottery pieces. "They're documented, but no one's followed up. I can get an expert to assess them." Back home, I caught Hazel Briarwood trimming her bushes across the street. "They're marking my land right now," I said, unable to hide the edge in my voice. "I know," she replied calmly. "I've been snapping photos every 2 hours." She showed me her phone. Documenting everything. That's the key. That afternoon, I called Soren Ashwood again. "I need 2 things. The process for an emergency historical preservation filing and anything you can dig up on Isolde Tremaine's business ties." While I waited for Soren to call back, I noticed Cade Flint watching me from his yard. "Hey neighbor," he called out, his cheerfulness over the top. "Excited for the new resort yet?" I walked over to the fence. "Why'd you build that deck right after the HOA's survey, but before they announced the boundary change? Your permit for it was filed exactly 2 days after Isolde's survey. Funny coincidence, huh?" Cade's smile vanished. "We just followed the official boundaries," he stammered. "The official boundaries include the 1948 markers I found this morning, one sitting right under your hot tub." Cade went pale, mumbled something about needing to make a call, and bolted inside. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang. "Ryland?" Isolde's voice dripped with sugar now. "I heard you're upset about the community project. Why not swing by my place so we can talk it out?" "I'd rather talk in front of everyone." "How about a special HOA meeting?" "No need for that. It's all settled." "Then my next move's ready too," I said. "Are you threatening me?" Her tone sharpened. "Just following procedure, like documenting the original boundary markers your survey conveniently missed," I replied. A long silence hung in the air. "What markers?" "You mean from 1948? Jericho found them this morning." I could feel the panic sparking in her mind. "Those old things? They don't matter against a modern survey. The county assessor's office thinks otherwise. I just spoke with them." Another pause. "We'll sort this out tomorrow. For now, stay off the common area." "You mean my land? I'll use every inch of it, thanks." I hung up, a surge of strength rising in my chest after weeks of suffocation. Soren called back right away. "You hit a nerve," he said. "Isolde just requested emergency access to all your land records. Too late, though. Way too late. I've flagged your lot with a preliminary historical review notice. No one can build while it's active." My phone buzzed with a text from Hein. Found the connection. Isolde's husband is the CFO at Silverwood Development. They just filed plans for a rental resort in our neighborhood. Another piece clicked into place. This wasn't just a fancy pool. They wanted to swallow my land whole for a fat commercial project. "We've got to let the neighborhood know," I said, texting Danny back fast. He showed me the community chat, where word of Isolde's ties to the project was spreading like wildfire. Then a message popped up from an unknown number. "Emergency HOA meeting called for 6 tomorrow morning. All board members required." I gave a thin smile, unease bubbling up. They're scrambling now. I wanted to feel relieved, but my gut told me Isolde wouldn't back off that easy. She'd sunk too much into this. Right then, a blinding glare flared from my backyard. Giant floodlights from the Flint's property blasted straight at me, so bright I couldn't keep my eyes open, the light spilling through every window. "What are they up to now?" Danny blurted, squinting outside. I narrowed my eyes and spotted shadows near my shed. They were pulling up the boundary stakes I'd set. Heavy machinery roared me awake at 2 a.m. I bolted to the window, heart hammering as a massive bulldozer rolled toward the back acre. I grabbed my phone, ownership papers, and a flashlight. then raced outside, bare feet hitting the cold, wet grass. "Stop right now!" I yelled, swinging the flashlight wildly. The bulldozer's headlights dazzled me, but it kept coming until the driver, a guy in a hard hat who didn't seem to care, finally halted. "Just following orders. Got the paperwork here. Says this is HOA land." "That paperwork's wrong," I shot back, forcing my voice steady even as anger boiled inside. My grandfather's words about holding onto our land echoed in my head, pushing me to stand my ground. Headlights swept the yard as 3 cars pulled up. Isolde stepped out of a gray SUV, dressed sharp despite the pre-dawn hour, trailed by Cade, Marlowe, and 2 strangers with briefcases. "Ryland," Isolde said, her lips curling into a strained smile. "Glad to see you up so early. Just in time to watch us break ground." I held up my phone. "I've called Sheriff Barrett. He's on his way. You're trespassing on my property." "Actually," Isolde countered, flipping open a file from her leather case, "per the latest county survey, this land's community-owned. We've got a generous compensation offer." Cade smirked behind her. "Don't be stubborn, Ryland. This resort's good for the whole neighborhood." I stood firm on the damp earth, the chill under my feet sharpening my focus. 2 days ago, I filed an emergency injunction. This land's been my family's for 7 generations, and I've got the original survey markers to prove it. Isolde froze for a split second, a flicker of unease in her eyes. "An injunction? That's inconvenient." She turned to one of the men. "Miles, call Judge Donovan. Keep dialing till he picks up." The sound of a police siren wailed in the distance, slicing through the thick tension. Sheriff Barrett, my dad's old trout fishing buddy, pulled up in his patrol car, looking anything but pleased. "What's going on here?" he asked, adjusting his belt as he stepped forward. Isolde moved in, hand outstretched with a greeting. "Good morning, Sheriff. Just a little mix-up over property lines. Nothing to worry about." "Nothing to worry about?" I snapped, my voice rising with frustration. "They're trying to steal my land." Barrett glanced between us. "Do you have permits for operating machinery before 6 in the morning and a building permit for this plan?" Isolde's smile faltered for a moment. "We've got HOA approval." "That's not what I asked," Barrett cut in. "County rules ban construction before 6 in residential zones, and I don't see any permits being shown." As they argued, I noticed Hazel Briarwood, my 85-year-old neighbor, walking up with a stack of weathered papers. She'd been on the first HOA board 35 years ago before retiring. "Isolde," Hazel called, her voice carrying despite her small frame. "You ought to look at these before you make a big mistake." Isolde waved her off. "Later, Hazel." Hazel didn't flinch, handing the papers straight to me. "Your grandfather and I prepped for something like this way back. In '92, the HOA tried pulling this on the Navarro place, too." I skimmed the documents, original meeting minutes, showing the true boundaries were filed with the state, not just the county. "Sheriff," I said, "I want to file a harassment complaint and get these people and their equipment off my land right now." Isolde's phone rang. She stepped aside to take it, her face darkening as she listened. Turning back, her confidence had faded. "Looks like there's a paperwork snag," she told her group. "We'll pause today to sort out some technicalities." The bulldozer guy looked relieved as he climbed down. "So, day off then? Pack it up," Isolde barked as the crew grudgingly pulled back. I noticed a few neighbors gathering at the edge of my property, watching it all unfold. Some held up phones, recording. Isolde clocked it too. She narrowed her eyes as she headed to her car. "This isn't over, Ryland. The board's voting tonight on activating the emergency rights clause. You'd better have a reasonable counteroffer by then." Barrett waited till they were gone, then turned to me. "Your dad always said the HOA would try something like this after he passed. You holding up?" I nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of facing this alone. "I'm okay, but I've got to gear up for tonight." Hazel patted my shoulder. "You're not alone. A few of us still remember how this place started before Isolde turned it into her personal playground." As we stood in the yard watching the sunrise, my phone pinged with a text from Hein. "Found something big in the county archives. Meet me at 10. Bring tea, lots of it." I looked up at the neighbors still lingering at the property line. A few waved encouragement. Others turned away, avoiding my gaze. The lines were drawn, and tonight's vote would show who stood where. "You can't come in." Isolde's assistant tried to block me as I pushed through the double doors of the Thornfield Community Center. The emergency HOA meeting had started 15 minutes early, another of Isolde's tricks. "I've got every right," I said, clutching my leather satchel tight. Inside was the all-night research I'd done with Hein, documents that could change everything. Heads turned as I strode down the aisle. The room was packed. Over 80 neighbors, some I'd known since I was a kid, others newcomers lured by Isolda's promises of a ritzy resort. She stood at the podium, mid-sentence, her sharp navy suit standing out. As I was saying before the interruption, the vote to activate the Community Enhancement Clause needs a 3/4 majority. I raised my voice. Before you vote, everyone deserves to know what they're choosing. Isolde gripped the mic harder. Ryland, you're disrupting. We follow meeting rules here. Rules? I said, opening my satchel. I spent all night figuring out how many you've broken. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I spotted Cade and Marlowe in the front row, Cade fidgeting with his collar. A few rows back, Hazel nodded encouragement. Order please, Miles, Isolda's lawyer friend, spoke up. The agenda doesn't allow. I cut him off. An agenda that changed without proper notice. Section 6 of your bylaws requires 48 hours warning for an emergency meeting, with no edits after it's sent out. Miles went quiet as a few neighbors nodded in agreement. I stepped toward the council table. I request 15 minutes to present critical info before the vote. Councilmember Tessa Quinlan, always fair, even if close to Isolde, chimed in. I moved to let Ryland speak. Anyone second that? A handful of voices called out. Isolde's face tightened, but she stepped aside. Fine. 15 minutes. I spread 3 big maps across the presentation table. This first one's the original 1947 Thornridge survey. It shows the natural creek boundary defining my family's land, I said, pointing to the winding blue line. The creek marked the split between private and community property, but after the 1971 flood, it shifted. Ancient history, Isolde interrupted. I kept my voice steady, pressing on. Your new survey ignores the original markers, which state law still recognizes as legal, even if nature moves. I unrolled Hines' newly certified survey, its red line stretching far beyond what the HOA claimed. Per state law and county records, my land covers this entire area, including parts some folks thought were theirs. Murmurs rippled through the room as neighbors caught on. No way, Cade Flint blurted, his face paling. Afraid so, I said. Your pool crosses 15 feet onto my land, and Isolde's home extension from last summer, over 20 feet. All eyes swung to Isolde. For the first time, her cool mask cracked. Nonsense. Our survey came from my brother-in-law's firm. A clear conflict of interest, I broke in, which I flagged in an ethics complaint to the state licensing board this morning. I handed copies to each council member, but there's more, something bigger. From my satchel, I pulled a plastic bag holding what looked like stone arrowheads. Yesterday, during a legal survey, we found these. The county archaeologist's initial take? They're about 900 years old. The room fell dead silent. I've filed for historical preservation, I explained. That means no building within 250 feet of the find, which covers all my land. Hazel Briarwood stood, walking slowly to the front. I was there when they turned up. With my amateur archaeology background, I knew their value right away. Isolde's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. She shoved him aside. This is a delay tactic, she snapped. We've got investors, signed contracts. Her words hung there, heavy with implication. Tessa Quinlan leaned forward. What investors, Isolde? The council hasn't approved any contracts. Isolde froze, realizing her slip too late. The room erupted with questions. Order! Order! Isolde slammed the gavel so hard the handle snapped off. I'm not done, I said. Digging through land records, I found something else interesting. I held up a highlighted document. 4 months ago, Isolde and her husband set up an LLC called Silver Pine Development Partners. A month later, that LLC bought the vacant lot next to mine, a lot that'd skyrocket in value if a resort went up beside it. Councilmember Silas Drayton's eyes widened. You told us you sold that to family. This is slander, Isolde shouted. No, I said calmly. It's public record. Tessa stood. I move to adjourn and suspend all project actions until these allegations are investigated. Seconded, a few voices rang out. You can't do that, Isolde's voice pitched high. We've got deadlines. What deadlines? Silas asked. What contracts are you talking about? As the council turned on each other with questions, I saw Cade slip out a side door, phone pressed to his ear. Isolde caught me watching him go, a flicker of strain in her eyes. This isn't over, Ryland, she said. Tessa approached me as the meeting dissolved into chaos. You should know, Isolde's been talking to city officials about rezoning this whole area. Her game's bigger than just your land. I nodded, the pieces clicking. Thanks for the heads up. As neighbors crowded around with questions, my phone buzzed with a text from Hein. Don't celebrate yet. Found a building permit under another company name. They're targeting Hazel's land next. Meet me at the county office now. I glanced across the room. Isolde was huddling with Miles and 2 council members. Even stalled, she flashed a faint smile. This fight was far from done. Langston cleared his throat. We've reviewed your documents. The council's ready to make a reasonable offer. What offer? I asked, raising an eyebrow. We'll drop all claims to your land, Isolde said through gritted teeth, if you agree not to sue over existing structures on it. I laughed. You mean your illegal home extension and the Flint's pool that's 10 feet over my line? That's your big offer? It's more than fair, Councilmember Silas Drayton insisted, his face tight with stress. What about the bulldozer that nearly tore up my flower beds? The noise violations, the threats, the lies. You fed the neighborhood about my land, I pressed. Langston stepped forward, lowering his voice. Let's be realistic here. We could drag this out in court for years. Go ahead and try, I said, pulling out my phone. I've got a recording of Isolde ordering the groundbreaking before it was approved, plus statements from 4 contractors saying they were told to ignore boundary markers. Isolde lunged toward me. You can't prove that. And copies of emails where you schemed to pressure me into selling, I went on, watching her face drain of color. My cousin at the county records office found them pretty interesting. Did you know HOA filings that break protocol become public after 5 years? The air turned thick, almost suffocating. Langston whispered urgently to Isolde, her perfectly styled hair seeming to wilt by the second. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice heavy with defeat. I'd been waiting for that. First, a binding agreement, with steep penalties if you break it. The rec center gets built on actual common land near the back gate. Second, new noise rules with real enforcement. Third, you apologize publicly at the next meeting. Cade, hovering in the back, rushed forward. That's ridiculous. You can't demand all that. I'm not done, I cut in, staying calm. Fourth, I want a seat on the Architectural Review Committee. And finally, set up a boundary verification fund for every home in the neighborhood, paid from the HOA reserve budget. No way, Isolde fumed. We'd have to raise dues or cut your executive salary, I suggested, smiling. Your choice. Clusters of people formed, whispering tensely. Langston shook his head nonstop while Isolde pointed toward my house. Mrs. Ortiz had ditched watering her flowers, openly watching. Hazel flashed a thumbs up from her porch. After a long pause, Isolde stepped back, her pricey heels sinking into my grass. Fine, she spat, extending a hand. But this deal comes with a confidentiality clause. No one hears about what went down here. I shook her cold hand. Too late. The neighbors already did. As they slunk back to their cars, defeated and muttering, I caught Silas whispering to Isolde. Why'd we agree to all that? She snapped back, sharp and bitter. Because he didn't mention the tax reassessment if he reports the right boundaries to the county. We'd all be sunk. I smirked to myself. I hadn't even thought of that angle. Sometimes the best win comes from letting your opponent imagine their own worst nightmare. The battle was won, but a gut feeling told me this war wasn't over. Isolde's eyes glinted with revenge as she drove off. What was she plotting next? My hand trembled slightly as I opened the certified letter. 8 months after that showdown, Isolde had faded from the public eye, but rumors swirled through the neighborhood like autumn wind. Some said she was gathering dirt to use against me. Others claimed she'd hired a private investigator. The whispers kept me restless every night. The HOA meeting was tonight. Would she make her move? I skimmed the official letter's header and froze. The county tax office had finished reassessing all of Thornridge based on the new survey. Isolde's home value jumped 35% thanks to unreported expansions onto my land. The Flints took a similar hit. My taxes? Untouched, thanks to the historical preservation status Hein helped me secure. The doorbell jolted me. Through the peephole, I saw Cade Flint standing alone, looking nervous, shifting from foot to foot. What do you want? I asked, cracking the door just enough to talk. Can we talk? He looked different, humbler. I brought something you need to see. Wary, I let him in. He set a USB drive on the coffee table. Isolde's working on something big, he said, his voice dropping low. After you forced that apology, she got obsessed with getting even. She's convinced half the board to back a secret plan. I picked up the USB. What's this? Everything. Emails, plans, fake evidence she's cooked up to smear your land claim, he said, his face flushed with shame. Marlo and I were in on it until we saw how far she's willing to go. Why turn on her now? I asked, skepticism thick in my tone. Cade sighed. The tax reassessment hit us hard. When I asked Isolde for help, she laughed and said we were acceptable losses in her war with you. He looked me square in the eye. We've got a kid heading to college. We can't handle her revenge games. That night's HOA meeting buzzed with tension. The turnout was bigger than usual. Word of something major brewing had spread fast. I spotted Cade and Marlowe sitting far from Isolde, who glared at them with pure venom. Hazel tapped her gavel. She's the interim chair now. Before we dive in, I hear Mrs. Tremaine has an announcement. Isolde strode to the podium, her eyes gleaming with triumph. After months of digging, I've uncovered evidence that'll shock this neighborhood, she said, pulling out a thick file. That disputed land survey, it's based on forged documents. Murmurs swept the room. My heart raced. I moved to immediately void all decisions tied to this false claim and file suit. Order, please, I said, standing to cut her off. Before any vote, the council needs to see evidence I got today. I plugged Cade's USB into the projector. Isolde's face went ashen as her own emails flashed up, exposing her plot to fake evidence against me. That's not real, she stammered. It's from your computer, Cade said, standing beside Marlowe. We've given sworn statements about you ordering us to forge documents. The room erupted, council members firing questions, residents demanding answers. Through the chaos, I saw Langston, the HOA's legal counsel, slip out the back door. Hazel banged her gavel hard. Order! As interim chair, I moved to suspend Mrs. Tremaine from the board pending investigation. The vote was unanimous, except for Isolde, who sat frozen in her chair. Later, as people filtered out, neighbors who'd once avoided me stopped to chat. Mrs. Ortiz brought homemade cookies. Mr. Perry clapped my shoulder. You stood up for all of us, he said gruffly. These newcomers forgot what community really means. 3 weeks later, construction crews broke ground on the new rec center, on real common land by the back gate, just like I'd pushed for. Updated noise rules turned our once rowdy neighborhood into a peaceful haven. Isolde quietly listed her house for sale. A knock revealed Hazel with a bottle of wine and official papers. The council voted unanimously, she said, beaming with pride as You're now chair of the Architectural Review Committee and the new Property Rights Commission. We sat on the porch, watching the sunset, clinking glasses. I didn't want to fight, I admitted. I just wanted to keep what's mine. Hazel nodded. Sometimes the best trap isn't set with anger, it's patience. You gave Isolde enough rope, and she hanged herself with it. As dusk settled over my land my family will hold for generations thanks to its new preservation status, my phone buzzed with a text from Hein. University expert finished testing those artifacts we found. They're not just real, they're rare. The State Historical Society wants to talk preservation grants. I laughed out loud. Grandpa always said this land was special, but he never dreamed how much. Not in money, but in community. The HOA took the bait perfectly, lunging for what they thought was an easy grab, never suspecting I'd laid a trap to protect this place forever. The sweetest victories don't come from force, they come from wisdom. And sometimes, justice arrives in unexpected packages, wrapped in a preservation order even the toughest HOA can't bulldoze through. So, what do you think of this story? A legal expert chimed in, saying Ryland Ashwood's tale isn't just about a land fight, it's proof the law can empower everyday people against overwhelming odds. Ryland turned HOA bylaws, legal surveys, and historical preservation into both shield and sword, flipping Isolde's scheme with a razor-sharp grasp of his rights. In today's world, the lesson here is clear. The law isn't just for the powerful. When you understand it and use it wisely, it becomes a force to defend your justice and legacy against those who overstep. Learn to make legal knowledge your ally. It's the key to not getting played. This story's all about entertainment and education. No shade, slander, or offense meant to anyone or anything. What's your take on wielding the law as a weapon? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unique deep dives like this. Thanks for sticking with this video till the end. Wishing you a peaceful day. Catch you in the next one.